everyone, in this video we are going to discuss about the primary laws of learning. So basically this comes under the topic laws of learning. So these are certain principles that we can associate with any kind of teaching or learning process. And again, these laws of learning can be distinguished or it can be differentiated into two different categories. We have the primary laws as well as the secondary laws. So what we are going to do in this session is focusing on these primary laws of learning. We'll be going into the details of the major three important primary laws of learning, and also I will be giving you the list of the secondary laws as well. So secondary laws, you can just take down these important secondary laws as such, and we have detailed classes on secondary laws of learning in our LMS platform as well. Okay, so going into the topic, that is primary laws of learning. Initially what we are going to do is we are looking at what this laws of learning is all about. So we already said that laws of learning can be also termed as principles of learning. So educational psychology or educational psychologists, they have identified several principles of learning, which is also termed as laws of learning, that can be associated generally to any kind of learning processes. So the theorist whom you can associate with this concept is this man whose name is Edward Thorndike, and he has initially developed three laws which are termed as the primary laws of learning. Okay, so again later on many other theorists and Edward Thorndike himself has explored this area so much so that they have identified certain other laws or principles as well, which they have categorized or classified as the secondary laws of learning. So as I have already mentioned, our focus in this video is particularly on the primary laws, and also we'll be just have a look at the secondary laws as well. So which are the primary laws of learning that can be associated with this concept? So that can be classified as law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect. So these are certain principles that we have to take in account when we are thinking of a teaching learning process. So there are certain principles that are generally associated with learning process that can be identified, or if you have a look at that principles, that will actually help you to make your teaching learning process more effective. That is the idea. Okay, so these three important laws of learning can be called as the primary laws of learning. So we'll be going to discuss each of this in detail. Okay, so the first law is law of readiness. So what do I mean by law of readiness? So it is something associated with the mental or physical readiness that we have when we approach a learning process. Okay, so if you are completely ready to learn something, or if you are motivated to do something, or if you have a clear objective of what to do next, then that will actually reflect in your learning as well. So if you are demotivated, or if you have some other worries or responsibilities that actually affects your learning, that of course results, or that of course reflects in your learning process as well, right? So that is what this law of readiness is all about. So the law of readiness means a person can learn when physically and mentally adjusted or ready to receive stimuli. If trainees have a strong purpose, a clear objective, and a sound reason for learning, they usually make more progress than trainees who lack motivation. So this is what we are focusing here. So if we are ready physically and mentally, if we are ready, if we have a very good objective or a sound reason for learning, that will actually reflect in our learning process, so that will actually make our learning more effective. On the other side, if outside responsibilities or worries weigh heavily on trainees' minds, or if their personal problems seem unsolvable, they may have little interest in learning. Okay, so this is what we are focusing in law of readiness. So we should have a mindset or a mental setup or a physical readiness to approach a learning process. Otherwise, if you are worried or if you have any other responsibilities that actually affects our entire learning process, that will actually demotivate us, right? Or it will actually results in a little or having little interest in learning, right? So that is what law of readiness is all about. So we have to be mentally and physically ready to receive the stimuli, or we have to be mentally and physically ready to learn something new. So that is the first primary law that we have discussed, that is law of readiness. Secondly, we have law of exercise. So what do you mean by law of exercise? This is all about practice, revision, right? So we need to revise, we need to practice something more in order to get, or in order to make that thing fresh in our mind, right? So that is where law of exercise focuses here. So the law of exercise stresses the idea that repetition is basic to the development of adequate responses. Things most often repeated are easiest remembered, right? This is what we are always mentioning. This is what the importance of revision is all about. So if we have exposure to something only a single time, that will not remain in our mind for a longer period of time, right? So if we learn something, make sure that we are repeating, we are recalling that, we are revising that so much so that it can be easily remembered. Okay, so that is what law of exercise is all about. If you want to remember something in your exam, you have to revise that again and again, right? Then only that will be kept safe in your mind for a longer period of time. So the mind can rarely recall new concepts or practices after a single exposure, but every time it is practiced, learning continues and is enforced. So if we have single exposure, or if we are reading something for only for one time, then if you need to remember it sometime later, it's not possible. You'll be confused, you'll be having certain, of course, a confusion. So because the thing is, you know it, you read it somewhere, but you cannot recall it properly. That is the problem. So what we have to do here is, we have to repeatedly recall it, we have to revise it, we have to practice it. This is something that is very important when it comes to teaching and learning. So being an instructor or being a teacher, what we have to do here is we need to make opportunities. We need to provide opportunities for the trainees or the learners, so much so that they can do this process. They can practice, they can repeat, they can revise what they have learned. So we can arrange some test papers, or we can arrange some quiz and all that, so that will give them an opportunity to remember what they have learned so far, right? So the instructor must provide opportunities for trainees to practice or repeat the task, and we can use a lot of activities. We can use different types of activities, which includes recall, review, restatement, manual drill, and physical application. Whatever helps you in remembering the thing, or learning the thing again and again, or practicing the thing again and again, you can do it. So an instructor or a teacher has to make adequate opportunities for the learners or the trainees to practice or to repeat the task again. Okay. important thing that you have to remember here, which is again associated with law of exercise, is it has two different parts. Thorndike says that law of exercise has two parts, and that includes law of use and law of disuse. So the term itself is self-explanatory. So law of use means the more often an association is used, the stronger it becomes. So how much more you repeatedly exercise or practice something, that much stronger that thing will kept in your mind. Okay, so that is law of use, and law of disuse is just opposite of what law of use is all about. The longer an association is unused, the weaker it becomes. So if you are not using, or if you are not practicing something, or if you are not revising something, of course there are high chances that you will forget that idea as well. Okay, so that is the two parts of law of exercise, which includes law of use and law of disuse. So far we have discussed about two important primary laws, right? So we discussed about law of readiness, and also we discussed about law of exercise. The third primary law of learning is law of effect. Okay, so what do you mean by law of effect? So this is all about, or it involves the emotional reaction of the learner. That means if you're learning something, if you're learning some new concepts or theories, at the point when you actually understand what that theory or that concept is all about, you yourself get an emotional reaction, or you yourself get a satisfaction. Oh, I have learned this. So that will give you happiness, right? So that is what this emotional reaction is all about. So there is a self-satisfaction part there. And also if you're doing something really good, or you're learning something and you're achieving something, and someone comes, your teacher, your parents, or anyone for that matter, they comes and appreciates you, that will give you some kind of a joy, right? That is again a very important part of teaching and learning process. Okay, so that is law of effect. So it involves the emotional reaction of the learner. So learning will always be much more effective when a feeling of satisfaction, pleasantness, or reward accompanies or is a result of the learning process. So that means if learning gives you some kind of satisfaction, that will actually motivate you to study more, right? So if you are achieving something and someone comes and appreciates you, or if you're getting some reward, that will actually motivate you to learn more. So that is what it focuses here. So learning will always be much more effective when a feeling of satisfaction, pleasantness, or reward accompanies or is a result of the learning process. So when we consider this law of effect, there is another side to it as well. Here we said that, okay, if you're getting some kind of a satisfaction through learning, or if you're getting some kind of reward through learning, that will actually motivate you to study more. That will make your study process more effective. That is one part of the story. The other part is, there are at times people who may struggle with this learning process. There are at times people might not understand what a concept is or what a theory is. They have tried, and at times they fail to achieve a goal that they really desire for. At that point of time also, there is there is a very important part of this emotional support that plays in the learning process. So usually it is better to show trainees that a problem is not impossible but is within their capability to understand and solve. So if a student or a trainee or a person or a learner for that matter, he or she is struggling to understand something, at that point of time also what we have to do is we have to support them. We have to talk to them. We have to say them that, okay, it's not a very huge problem that is out of your abilities. Just try. We can try it and we can take our own time, study it slowly, part by part. We can also achieve it. So that kind of emotional support is also very important in the learning process. That means a student's chance of success is always high when it is always in an increasing pace if the learning experience is a pleasant one. That is what law of effect is all about. So we already said that in this session what we are going to do is, or what we are focusing here is the primary laws of learning, which includes law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect. But along with this, we are just taking the list of secondary laws as well. So you will get an idea about what are the secondary laws also. So we have detailed discussions on the secondary laws also in our LMS platform, but in this session we're not going to discuss the details of the secondary or subordinate laws of learning, but we are just listing them down. That's it. Okay, so which are the secondary or subordinate laws? We have law of primacy, law of recency, law of intensity of stimulus, law of multiple response, then we have law of attitude, law of analogy and assimilation, law of associative shifting, law of prepotency of elements, and law of partial activity. So these are the secondary laws or the subordinate laws. So generally if you consider the questions that are coming from this area, most often what they are focusing is they'll just ask you to find out the primary laws from the given options or the secondary laws from the given options. That's how they most often focus on this area. So this kind of an understanding is enough for you to understand or for you to answer those kinds of questions. But at times you can also expect questions very specifically from some of the types of laws of learning as well. So there is also a chance for that. But generally what they are focusing the questions is we need to identify whether this comes under the primary laws or this comes under the secondary laws. That's it. So I'll just show you some sample questions that were asked in the previous NET exam. So this comes in June 2023 NET exam. Which of the following are the secondary laws of learning? And we have the options: law of multiple response, law of associative shifting, law of effect, law of analogy, and law of exercise. So from the options, what we have to do is we need to identify the secondary laws, right? So if you consider the options that are given here, you already know that law of effect and law of exercise comes under the primary laws of learning. So you cannot consider these two options, C and D, as answer for this question. So if that's the case, which are the right options that you can choose from the given options which can be considered as the secondary laws of learning: law of multiple response, law of associative shifting, and law of analogy. So we have A, B and D as the right answers. So A, B and D only is option B. So the right answer is of course option B itself. Moving to the next question, this came in December 2022 NET exam. Which of the following does not come under primary laws of learning? And we have the options: law of effect, law of readiness, law of multiple response, and law of exercise. So if you consider these options, you know which are the primary laws: effect, readiness, and exercise. This law of multiple response is basically a secondary law. And the question here focuses is we need to identify which of the following does not come under primary laws of learning. So we need to identify which among the following cannot be considered as a primary law of learning. So in that manner or in that matter, we need to consider option C, that is law of multiple response. So the right answer is option C itself. Another question from the same exam, December 2022 NET exam, and the question goes like this: which of the following are the primary laws of learning? And we have the options: law of exercise, law of partial activity, law of readiness, law of associative shifting, and law of effect. So what we need to identify here is we need to identify the primary laws of learning. So law of exercise, law of readiness, and law of effect are primary laws, and law of partial activity and law of associative shifting, both those options are coming under secondary laws of learning. So which is the right answer or which is the right options that you can consider here? That is option A, C and D. So A, C and D is the right answer. A, C and D only is option B. So the right answer is option B itself. So in this session, what we have discussed is the primary laws of learning. Okay, so we can consider the different principles or laws of learning into two different categories or two different groups. We already said that this is an idea which was proposed by Edward Thorndike, and we have primary laws which includes three laws basically. We have law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect as well, and the other laws comes under the secondary laws. So that is what we have discussed in this video. In the recent exams also we can see that they have explored this area so much so that we are getting a lot of questions from these questions in the recent exams as well. Okay, so I hope this video will be really helpful in your NET preparations. So thanks for watching and happy learning.